It wears the mask of responsibility and calls itself caution, but beneath the surface it is hesitation born from self-doubt. Many people believe that if they think long enough, analyze deeply enough, and anticipate every possible outcome, they will be safe from pain, mistakes, or regret. This belief feels logical, even wise, yet it quietly drains life of movement. Intelligence seeks clarity and then acts. Fear seeks certainty and therefore never moves. True intelligence is efficient. It observes, understands, and responds. Overthinking, on the other hand, circles endlessly around the same questions, hoping that repetition will create control. The mind convinces itself that more thinking equals better preparation, but preparation that never leads to action is avoidance. It is the mind postponing discomfort by staying busy inside its own noise. Fear prefers this internal chaos because it feels safer than the unknown reality outside. Overthinking often begins with the desire to avoid making the wrong decision. The mind imagines every possible future, weighing each one as if life were a mathematical equation that must be solved before it can be lived. But life does not reveal itself through calculation alone. Experience is the teacher, and experience requires movement. Fear resists this truth because movement exposes vulnerability, so the mind keeps thinking, rehearsing, planning, and replaying, telling itself it is being smart while quietly refusing to step forward. What makes overthinking dangerous is that it disconnects a person from the present moment. While the body is here, breathing, sensing, existing, the mind is elsewhere, trapped in imagined futures or reconstructed pasts. Intelligence lives in the present because it needs real information. Fear lives in imagination because imagination can be manipulated. In imagined scenarios, fear always finds proof that waiting is safer than acting. Many people confuse anxiety with insight. They believe that the tightness in their chest and the constant mental chatter are signs that they care deeply or think deeply. In reality, this tension is often the body responding to unresolved fear. The mind is working overtime to justify inaction, to explain why now is not the right time, why conditions are not perfect, why one more thought is needed. This is not depth. This is resistance. Preparation has a purpose, but preparation has an endpoint. When preparation becomes endless, it has crossed into fear. Intelligence knows when enough information has been gathered. Fear never knows because fear is not seeking understanding, it is seeking reassurance. And reassurance is something the mind can never fully give itself. No amount of thinking can guarantee safety, approval, or success. Yet fear keeps trying, hoping that the next thought will finally bring peace. Overthinking also creates the illusion of control. The mind believes that by anticipating every possible problem, it can prevent failure. But control is fragile. The more tightly one tries to hold life, the more tension is created. Intelligence accepts uncertainty as a natural condition of living. Fear treats uncertainty as a threat that must be eliminated. This is why overthinkers feel exhausted. They are fighting reality instead of flowing with it. Another hidden cost of overthinking is the erosion of trust in oneself. When a person constantly questions their decisions before they are even made, they slowly lose confidence in their own ability to adapt. Intelligence trusts learning through experience. Fear demands perfection before experience. Over time, this pattern teaches the mind that it is not capable, that it must always second guess, that intuition is unreliable. This is how overthinking turns into paralysis. Action does not require absolute certainty. It requires willingness. Intelligence understands that mistakes are part of growth. Fear interprets mistakes as evidence of inadequacy. So it tries to prevent them by thinking more, planning more, delaying more. Yet every delay strengthens the fear because fear feeds on avoidance. The longer action is postponed, the more intimidating it becomes, and the mind then uses this increased fear as proof that it was right to hesitate in the first place. When overthinking is seen clearly, without judgment, its true nature becomes obvious. It is not a sign of high intellect, but of a nervous system stuck in protection mode. The mind is trying to shield the self from emotional discomfort, rejection, uncertainty, or loss. Recognizing this is not a weakness. It is the first step toward freedom. When fear is named, it loses some of its power to disguise itself as wisdom. Intelligence is calm. It does not rush, but it does not freeze. It listens, observes, and then commits. Fear is loud. It argues, doubts, and demands guarantees. The more a person learns to distinguish between these two voices, the easier it becomes to stop glorifying overthinking and start respecting action. Life responds to movement, not mental rehearsal. The mind was never meant to carry the weight of living on its own. The mind creates suffering by living in imagined futures. This is a subtle trap, one that many people fall into without realizing. The mind is incredibly powerful. It can visualize, plan, and predict. These abilities are essential for survival, for learning, and for growth. Yet when the mind uses these powers to dwell in possibilities that have not yet occurred, it begins to manufacture pain. The imagined future becomes a playground for anxiety, worry, and fear. It is a reality built entirely in thought, yet its effects are felt as if they were real. The body tenses, the heart races, the breath shortens, all for something that does not exist outside the mind. This tendency begins quietly. A small thought arises: what if I fail? Or what if they reject me? At first, it seems like caution, like preparation. The mind tells itself that imagining these scenarios will help avoid them. But the problem is that the mind cannot experience the future as it will be. It only replays fragments of memory, fears, and assumptions. The future the mind constructs is not a neutral space for planning. It is a distorted version of reality, painted with worry, insecurity, and doubt. The mind blends what it knows, what it has felt, and what it fears, creating a scenario that is almost always worse than what could actually happen. As these imagined futures take hold, suffering grows. The mind convinces itself that it is necessary to anticipate every possible outcome, to prepare for every difficulty, to calculate every potential mistake. This constant mental rehearsal becomes exhausting. Sleep becomes shallow, focus becomes scattered, and the ability to act decisively diminishes. All of this occurs not because life is inherently difficult, but because the mind insists on experiencing struggles that may never appear. In essence, the mind is manufacturing its own pain. What makes this suffering particularly insidious is its subtlety. People do not always recognize it as fear or self-imposed stress. They may call it prudence, foresight, or careful thinking, but careful thinking ends with decisions and action. Imagined futures often end in a loop, cycling through the same worries endlessly without conclusion. The mind rehearses the worst-case scenario, imagines rejection, envisions failure, predicts disappointment, and convinces itself that it is preparing. Yet in reality, it is imprisoning the self in anticipation, never releasing the tension through action. The mind's focus on the imagined future also disconnects a person from the present moment. Life exists in the here and now, yet the mind drifts ahead, projecting fears and anxieties onto days, weeks, or even years that do not yet exist. While the body is here, the mind is elsewhere, and the present becomes distorted. Moments pass unnoticed, opportunities are missed, and experience itself becomes secondary to anticipation. The more the mind lives in future scenarios, the less a person lives in life. Every breath, every interaction, every choice is filtered through the lens of imagined outcomes, and this creates a constant, subtle suffering that feels unavoidable. The imagined future often magnifies small uncertainties into catastrophic visions. A simple decision, like speaking up in a meeting or reaching out to someone, becomes a mental battlefield. The mind runs simulations of rejection, humiliation, and failure, playing them like a movie that has not yet been filmed. Anxiety builds, confidence diminishes, and hesitation grows. All of this is unnecessary because the future does not exist yet. The scenarios are not reality. They are projections shaped by fear, memory, and imagination. Yet the body reacts as though these imagined threats were real, creating tension, stress, and emotional fatigue. Another dimension of suffering arises from the expectation of control. The mind assumes that if it can predict every possible outcome, it can prevent negative experiences. But life is not fully controllable. Uncertainty is intrinsic to human existence. Attempts to control the uncontrollable create inner conflict. The mind wrestles with the impossibility of total certainty and punishes the self for not being able to anticipate everything. This creates a cycle. The mind worries about the unknown, tries to predict it, fails to control it, and then worries again endlessly. Suffering, in this case, is both the cause and the effect of over-projection into the future. The imagined future can also distort memory, blending past regrets with hypothetical scenarios. The mind often takes lessons from what went wrong and applies them not as guidance but as fear-based projections. A past mistake becomes evidence that failure is inevitable. A previous heartbreak becomes proof that rejection will repeat. Experiences are filtered through fear, and the mind presents this filtered version as if it were the only truth about what might happen. In this way, suffering is not just anticipated, it is justified and even amplified by memory. One of the most profound consequences is the way imagined futures steal energy from the present. The mind invests emotional power, creativity, and focus into situations that do not yet exist. Each worry is like a weight added to the chest. Every what if consumes attention that could otherwise be applied to real action, real connection, real experience. The future that is imagined is a phantom that cannot respond or change, yet it holds sway over the nervous system, the emotions, and the decisions of the individual. The solution lies not in suppressing the mind or ignoring foresight. Rather, it is in noticing the difference between productive planning and imagined suffering. Planning is grounded, specific, and actionable. Imagining the future, when driven by fear, is speculative, endless, and often catastrophic. Awareness of this distinction allows a person to step back, observe the mind, and recognize that much of the suffering is self-created. This recognition is the first step toward freedom, because once suffering is understood as manufactured, it can be loosened, questioned, and released. The mind creates suffering by living in imagined futures, because it mistakes simulation for reality, projection for truth, and anticipation for preparation. The more the mind clings to these mental constructs, the more it amplifies fear, stress, and tension. Awareness is the key and presence is the antidote. The body, the breath, the senses, and the immediate moment offer a return to reality, a space where experience is not filtered through catastrophic imagination. When attention shifts from the imagined future to the actual present, suffering begins to dissipate naturally, not by willpower, but by the simple fact that the mind is no longer driving life through fear-based projections. Life can only be experienced in the present moment. This is not a statement of philosophy alone. It is a truth that underlies every feeling, every sensation, every thought, and every action. Life does not exist in the past. It does not reside in the future. It is not hidden in plans, regrets, or memories. Life is not a concept to be understood or a goal to be reached. Life is a living flow, and this flow only appears here now, in the present moment. To grasp it, to truly feel it, one must shift attention from the endless chatter of the mind into the immediacy of being. So often, people live as though life is a series of events waiting somewhere ahead. They believe fulfillment will come when a goal is achieved, when circumstances align, or when something external changes. They measure happiness by what they lack, what they desire, or what they fear. Yet in doing so, they miss the only reality that is truly accessible, the present. Life cannot be stored in memory, anticipated in planning, or captured in imagination. It is constantly unfolding, moment by moment, whether one is aware of it or not. When the mind is preoccupied with the past, it revisits old wounds, failures, and disappointments. Memory is a valuable teacher, but the mind often uses it to replay pain, criticize choices, and cling to identity formed from what has already occurred. In this replay, one may feel justified in anger, sadness, or regret, yet these emotions are tied to a time that no longer exists. The body reacts as though the event is present. The heart tightens, the breath shallows, and tension arises, all for something that is gone. This is one way the present moment is stolen. The mind drags one into what no longer can be changed, and in doing so, life itself is lost. Similarly, when attention is given to the future, the mind generates endless projections, expectations, and anxieties. The future is unknown, inherently unpredictable, and cannot be experienced until it becomes now. Yet most people live in anticipation, imagining scenarios, rehearsing conversations, and predicting outcomes, as if this mental exercise could create certainty. The mind believes it is preparing, but what it really creates is worry, stress, and a perpetual sense of incompleteness. Anxiety is born from imagining a life that does not yet exist, and in this imagining, the richness of the present is entirely eclipsed. Life in its truest form is a series of sensations, perceptions, and choices that occur in this moment. When attention is placed fully on what is occurring, there is a depth to experience that is otherwise inaccessible. To breathe, to feel the rise and fall of the chest, to notice the texture of air on skin, to sense the rhythm of one's heartbeat, these are experiences that belong entirely to now. They are simple, yet profound. They are often overlooked because the mind prefers stories, narratives, and abstractions. Presence requires a willingness to step out of the story and into what is immediate, what is tangible, and what is real. The present moment is not passive. It does not ask one to stop thinking, planning, or striving. It asks only that one recognize where life is happening. Awareness of the present does not prevent growth. In fact, it enhances it. When attention is rooted in the now, every action becomes clearer, every decision becomes sharper, and every interaction becomes more genuine. One can plan for the future, learn from the past, and still engage fully with what is occurring at this very second. Presence is the foundation that allows life to be felt, not merely observed from a distance. Many people mistake constant activity for living fully. They fill each day with tasks, distractions, and entertainment, believing that being busy is the same as being alive. Yet busyness often masks absence. The body may be active, the schedule full, but the mind can still be elsewhere, in memory, in anticipation, in fear. True life cannot be measured by accomplishments, possessions, or social recognition. Life is measured by awareness, by the depth of engagement with each passing moment, by the capacity to feel fully whatever arises without clinging, resisting, or escaping. The present moment is also where freedom resides. Regret exists in the past. Anxiety exists in the future. Neither can be changed directly. The past has already occurred. The future has not yet arrived. Only this moment can be responded to. Only this moment can be lived authentically. Freedom arises when attention is anchored here, when one is not bound by what has been or what might be. In this space, the mind relaxes, the heart softens, and life is no longer a series of abstractions. It is a lived reality. One of the most profound aspects of the present is its impermanence. Every moment is fleeting, and this impermanence is what gives it depth and meaning. The taste of a meal, the sound of a voice, the warmth of sunlight on skin, each is unique and cannot be revisited. To try to hold it, to capture it in thought or memory, is to lose it. To fully engage with it, to notice it without distraction, is to allow life to be fully present. Awareness amplifies the richness of experience because the mind stops overlaying it with judgments, comparisons, and abstractions. Living in the present does not mean ignoring planning or reflection. It does not mean abandoning ambition or responsibility. Rather, it is the understanding that life itself is not in the plan or the reflection, it is in the experience of now. Actions taken from presence are more effective, decisions are clearer, and connections with others are deeper. When the mind ceases its obsession with what has passed or what may come, attention opens to the subtle, profound, and immediate reality of being alive. To experience life in the present moment is to step off the treadmill of constant mental projection. It is to notice the breath, the body, the senses, and the world unfolding in front of you. It is to engage fully with whatever arises, whether it is joy, discomfort, uncertainty, or simplicity. Presence does not demand perfection or constant happiness. It only demands attention, acceptance, and willingness to meet life as it is, moment by moment. The mind often resists this simplicity because it prefers drama, prediction, and narrative. Yet the deeper one moves into awareness of now, the more the illusions of past and future dissolve, revealing that life is never somewhere else. It is always here, it is always now. And it is only in this awareness, in this direct engagement with what is, that life can truly be felt, appreciated, and lived. Clarity comes from action, not endless analysis. This is a truth that many people struggle to accept because the mind loves to think, plan, and dissect every possible scenario before making a move. Thinking feels productive, important, even intelligent. It gives the illusion of control and the comfort of certainty. Yet, in reality, clarity is not born from the number of hours spent in contemplation. Clarity emerges when one steps forward, engages with the unknown, and allows experience itself to illuminate the path. Thought alone can never create certainty, it can only simulate it. Analysis is seductive because it feels safe. The mind believes that if it can anticipate every obstacle, weigh every variable, and consider every potential outcome, it can prevent mistakes, failure, or regret. People imagine themselves in a room of choices, turning each over, examining every angle, rehearsing every conversation. The mind tells itself, if I think enough, I will know enough. But life does not unfold in the abstract, it unfolds in motion. Every plan, no matter how detailed, encounters reality, and reality often deviates from expectation. Endless analysis gives the illusion of preparation, but without action, it is inertia disguised as wisdom. Clarity is experiential. It is born in the doing, not the theorizing. When action is taken, the world responds. Information that was abstract becomes concrete. Problems that were imagined in the mind become tangible challenges to address. Feelings that were vague become unmistakably real. Decisions that were paralyzed by doubt reveal themselves in the light of experience. The mind cannot fully comprehend reality from thought alone. It can only observe, imagine, and hypothesize. To truly know, one must engage, act, and step into the unfolding of life. One of the reasons endless analysis feels necessary is the fear of making mistakes. The mind worries that a wrong step will cause harm, embarrassment, or failure. This fear is powerful because it feeds on uncertainty, and it convinces the individual that inaction is safer than movement. Yet inaction is often far riskier than action because it creates stagnation, indecision, and missed opportunity. The longer one waits, the more overwhelming the imagined consequences grow. Action, by contrast, provides feedback. It teaches, corrects, and refines. Through action, one learns what works, what doesn't, and what must be adjusted, and this learning produces clarity far beyond what endless thinking can achieve. Clarity also comes from testing assumptions. The mind constructs narratives, creates expectations, and imagines outcomes, but these are rarely fully aligned with reality. Action exposes the difference between what the mind assumes and what is actually true. A conversation started, a project begun, a risk taken. These reveal nuances that no amount of mental rehearsal could uncover. Thinking can predict possibilities, but it cannot guarantee understanding. Only engagement does that. Only movement converts abstract ideas into real-world knowledge, and this knowledge is the foundation of clarity. Endless analysis is often fueled by a desire for perfection. People want to be sure, to plan meticulously, and to avoid any potential mistake. But life is inherently uncertain. The very nature of existence is unpredictability. To wait for perfect conditions is to wait indefinitely. Clarity does not arrive in perfection, it arises through trial, error, and adaptation. Action allows one to refine, adjust, and learn in real time. Each step forward illuminates the next, even when the path is unclear, and this illumination cannot occur in the mind alone. Another dimension of clarity through action is the alignment of mind and body. Thinking is abstract, static, and removed from physical reality. Action engages the body, the senses, and the environment. It forces the mind to confront reality as it is, not as it imagines it. The body responds, instincts awaken, and intuition becomes sharper. Clarity emerges as a synthesis of thought, experience, and bodily awareness. Without action, the mind's ideas remain untested, floating in theory, disconnected from the tangible truths that movement reveals. Action also dissolves the paralysis of overthinking. Endless analysis creates loop, scenarios are imagined, consequences are anticipated, doubts are amplified, and the mind spins without end. Each additional thought promises clarity, yet none of them can produce it. Movement interrupts this loop. The moment a step is taken, the loop breaks, and the mind receives real feedback. The abstract becomes concrete. The imagined becomes experienced. The fog of uncertainty lifts not through speculation, but through doing. Moreover, action cultivates confidence. Confidence is not the absence of doubt, it is the accumulation of evidence gained through experience. When one acts, one discovers the capacity to respond to challenges, to adapt to surprises, and to navigate uncertainty. Each action, regardless of outcome, builds a foundation for trust in oneself. Clarity grows alongside this trust because the mind begins to understand that it can handle reality, even when it is unpredictable. Thinking alone cannot provide this sense of capability. It is forged in motion, in engagement with life itself. Finally, clarity through action allows insight to emerge organically. The mind often blocks clarity by overcomplicating problems, constructing layers of what-ifs, and projecting fear into the unknown. Action simplifies complexity. It reduces the abstract to the concrete. It transforms uncertainty into information that can be acted upon. Each step forward creates feedback loops that reveal patterns, solutions, and understanding that were invisible in contemplation alone. Clarity comes from action, not endless analysis, because life is dynamic, immediate, and experiential. Thinking can guide, plan, and anticipate, but it cannot replace the knowledge gained by doing. Only through engagement with reality, through movement, through stepping into the unknown, does the mind receive the evidence, understanding, and insight that constitute true clarity. The longer one remains in analysis without action, the further clarity retreats, hiding behind imagined scenarios, hypotheticals, and fears. Action dissolves doubt, illuminates possibilities, and anchors understanding in lived experience, and it is only here, in the actual doing, that the fog of uncertainty begins to lift. Letting go of control restores inner peace. This is a principle that is simple in words but profound in practice. Human beings have an innate desire to control. We try to manage outcomes, influence the behavior of others, and orchestrate events in ways that make life predictable and safe. The mind believes that control is the path to security, happiness, and stability. Yet the deeper truth is that life by its nature is unpredictable, fluid, and constantly changing. The more we cling to control, the more tension and resistance we create, and the further we drift from peace. Inner peace arises not from the mastery of circumstance, but from the mastery of surrender. Control is often mistaken for competence. People believe that to act responsibly, they must anticipate every scenario, prevent every potential problem, and shape the world according to their preferences. The mind convinces itself that if everything is managed, then suffering can be minimized, mistakes can be avoided, and disappointment can be controlled. This mindset is seductive because it feels proactive. Yet it is ultimately a form of resistance to the flow of life, resistance to uncertainty, and resistance to reality as it is. The more energy we devote to controlling what cannot be controlled, the more we create friction within ourselves. The need for control originates in fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of loss, and fear of the unknown all drive the mind to grasp and manipulate. The desire to control is, in essence, a protective mechanism. It tells the self, if I can manage everything, nothing bad will happen. But the irony is that this attempt to secure the future creates suffering in the present. The mind becomes tense, restless, and anxious. The body mirrors this tension, the breath becomes shallow, and the heart tightens, all in response to imagined dangers and potential disruptions. In attempting to control life, one often experiences the very anxiety that control was meant to prevent. Letting go does not mean apathy, passivity, or irresponsibility. It does not mean abandoning goals, ignoring challenges, or giving up on life. Letting go is an act of clarity and courage. It is recognizing that while we can influence some aspects of life, many elements are beyond our power. The weather cannot be controlled, the actions of others cannot be commanded, and the unpredictability of circumstances cannot be eliminated. By accepting this reality, the mind releases the constant effort to micromanage every detail, and in that release, peace begins to emerge. Inner peace is a state of alignment with reality. It is the recognition that life unfolds moment by moment and that resistance only creates friction. When the desire for control is loosened, energy is freed from struggle. The mind is no longer exhausted by imagining all possible disasters or by trying to prevent every possible mistake. Attention can shift to what is present, what can be influenced constructively, and what can be accepted with calm. This shift brings clarity, serenity, and a deeper sense of trust in the natural flow of life. One of the most powerful aspects of letting go of control is the liberation it brings to relationships. Much of human tension comes from attempting to control others, how they think, feel, or act. We create expectations, attach conditions to love and acceptance, and demand behaviors that align with our desires. This creates resistance in both parties and erodes connection. Letting go of control in relationships allows people to be themselves. It fosters trust, openness, and mutual respect. When we stop trying to force outcomes, interactions become more authentic and inner peace grows because we are no longer entangled in battles that cannot be won. Control also fragments the mind. The mind that seeks to manage everything is constantly shifting focus from one imagined problem to another. It predicts scenarios, anticipates risks, and calculates consequences endlessly. This state of hyper-vigilance creates exhaustion, distraction, and inner turmoil. Letting go of control restores a sense of unity to consciousness. Instead of scattering attention across countless hypothetical futures, the mind can settle into the present, observing, responding, and engaging without tension. Peace arises when the mind is not torn between the reality that is and the fantasy that it wants to enforce. The paradox of control is that the more tightly it is held, the more it slips away. Life cannot be grasped, predicted, or fully managed. Attempts to control outcomes often lead to frustration, disappointment, and resistance from reality itself. Letting go is not giving up, it is aligning with life rather than fighting it. In surrendering the illusion of control, one discovers that outcomes are not the source of peace, presence, acceptance, and awareness are. By focusing on what can be influenced with wisdom and releasing attachment to the rest, inner calm is restored. Letting go also reconnects the self with intuition. When the mind is entangled in attempts to control every detail, intuition is drowned out by fear, expectation, and overanalysis. Surrendering the need for control quiets the chatter, allowing subtle insights, instincts, and understanding to surface. Decisions become clearer, responses become more fluid, and energy is no longer consumed by unnecessary struggle. Peace is not something that is achieved externally. It emerges naturally when the mind and body are aligned with the flow of reality. Another profound benefit of letting go of control is resilience. People who cling to control are often shattered by events that do not go according to plan. They experience disappointment as devastation because they have invested so much energy in managing outcomes. Those who let go are more adaptable. They respond to challenges with flexibility and presence. Setbacks are met with clarity and composure, not panic. Peace is sustained even amidst difficulty because it is rooted in acceptance rather than resistance. Finally, letting go of control allows life to be felt fully. When one is not preoccupied with manipulating outcomes, attention opens to the richness of experience. Joy is deeper, beauty is sharper, and connection is more profound. The present is no longer obscured by imagined scenarios or imagined expectations. Inner peace is not a passive state of detachment. It is the active engagement with life without the burden of resistance, without the need to bend reality to the mind's will, and without the illusion that one can fully govern the unfolding of existence. Stillness is the doorway to real living. In a world that glorifies movement, noise, and constant activity, the idea of stillness often feels foreign, uncomfortable, or even lazy. People are taught to measure life by productivity, achievements, and external milestones, as if the worth of living could be quantified by how much is done or acquired. Yet, real living is not measured by motion alone. It is not the accumulation of experiences, possessions, or recognition. Real living arises when the mind, body, and spirit enter a state of stillness where distraction ceases and the present moment can be fully felt. Stillness is more than physical quiet. Sitting in a chair without moving or lying in bed without speaking does not guarantee true stillness. The mind can remain restless, replaying memories, imagining futures, or obsessing over trivialities. True stillness is the calming of mental turbulence. It is the cessation of the internal dialogue that constantly evaluates, judges, and predicts. It is the ability to simply be without interference, without distraction, without the compulsion to act or react. In this space, life itself becomes visible. The beauty of a moment, the subtlety of sensation, the depth of consciousness, these are only accessible when the mind is still. Most people avoid stillness because it forces confrontation with themselves. Silence reveals thoughts, feelings, fears, and desires that are usually hidden under activity and distraction. The mind resists because stillness exposes the raw reality of the self. Anxiety, tension, and unresolved emotions surface. Yet this exposure is not dangerous, it is the first step toward clarity. The mind has been conditioned to fear discomfort, but stillness does not amplify fear, it simply brings it into awareness. In this awareness, insight, understanding, and presence begin to emerge. Stillness allows perception to deepen. In constant motion, life is experienced superficially as a series of fragmented moments. The mind races from task to task, from memory to anticipation, never fully inhabiting the body, never truly engaging with reality. When stillness is embraced, the senses awaken. Sight becomes sharper, sound richer, and touch more immediate. Subtle cues in the environment, which are normally overlooked, suddenly come into focus. The world is no longer filtered through mental noise, it is experienced directly, vividly, and completely. In this way, stillness becomes a portal to authenticity, a space where life is felt, not merely observed. Stillness also fosters clarity. When the mind stops its endless chatter, insights emerge naturally. Problems that seemed unsolvable become simple because the mind is no longer clouded by distraction, fear, or bias. Decisions that were paralyzed by overthinking suddenly feel obvious because the clutter of imagined consequences has cleared. In stillness, one realizes that the answers were never in frantic activity or constant analysis. They were always available in the quiet space of awareness. The mind only recognizes them when it stops running. Another profound effect of stillness is the restoration of energy. Activity, even when meaningful, consumes the body and the nervous system. Constant motion creates tension, fatigue, and stress. The mind and body become exhausted by over-engagement with the external world. Stillness, by contrast, replenishes. It allows the nervous system to reset, the breath to deepen, and the heart to slow. In this state, energy is not depleted in resistance or distraction. Instead, it flows naturally, and the body and mind regain a sense of balance, harmony, and vitality. Stillness also nurtures presence in relationships. When the mind is constantly occupied, interactions with others are often superficial, distracted, or reactive. One listens without hearing, speaks without thought, and connects without depth. In stillness, one can truly attend to another being. The presence of quiet awareness allows empathy, understanding, and compassion to arise naturally. The ability to respond, rather than react, becomes possible. Relationships are no longer arenas of projection, expectation, or control. They become spaces of genuine connection, reflection, and mutual recognition. Stillness is also a teacher of impermanence. In the quiet, one notices the fleeting nature of sensation, thought, and emotion. Everything arises, exists, and passes away. The mind, which is usually desperate to grasp control or resist these flows, can finally relax. By observing without interference, one learns to accept the transitory nature of life. This acceptance is liberating because it dissolves attachment to outcomes, reduces fear, and allows the self to rest in the natural rhythm of existence. Inner peace emerges naturally, not through effort, but through simple observation. Moreover, stillness awakens creativity. When the mind is not racing from thought to thought, ideas begin to arise spontaneously. Solutions, insights, and inspiration emerge from the quiet, often in ways that could not have been forced. The space between thoughts becomes fertile ground for imagination, problem-solving, and artistic expression. In stillness, life becomes richer because the mind is no longer limited by habitual patterns and conditioned responses. It is free to explore, invent, and perceive without constraint. Stillness also reveals the interconnectedness of life. When the mind stops focusing solely on itself, awareness expands outward. One notices the subtle interactions between the body, the mind, and the environment. One observes the interdependence of people, nature, and circumstance. In this expanded awareness, life is experienced as a seamless flow rather than a series of isolated events. This perception fosters humility, gratitude, and reverence for existence itself. Finally, stillness is the doorway to real living because it allows one to meet life as it truly is, without the filters of expectation, fear, or desire. In activity alone, life is often experienced through distraction, projection, and reaction. In stillness, life is felt in its immediacy, in its subtlety, and in its fullness. Presence becomes possible, clarity arises naturally, and the richness of being is revealed. The moments that are normally overlooked, the sound of a leaf in the wind, the warmth of sunlight on skin, the rhythm of the breath become profound and meaningful. In stillness, life is no longer a series of events to be managed or survived. It becomes a direct experience, fully alive and deeply present.